all businesses are undergoing a lot of change at the moment. And I think Unit 4 is no different. And I think technology companies are also very high on the change agenda. So it does work well. I think, Unit 4 is on its own change business. We're moving from a sort of more traditional software company that operates with, sorry for the technology language, but from an on-prem business and moving to the cloud. And that is a huge change, not just in terms of the products and our customers, but also our people and how they think about how they support our customers. And what that means is we have to take our people on that journey of change. And it also means that we kind of have to think constantly about our employee experience and how we keep our people engaged as we go through that level of change with them. A good employee experience is finding the balance and being able to equip the business to focus on what matters to everybody, but at the same time, be prepared to be more agile, given that priorities and needs are constantly evolving. We're doing some interesting things around our people experience that may, I think, on the face of it, feel somewhat diametrically opposed. So we're focusing on things like creating a flexible work environment, giving people the opportunity to work how they want and where they want, obviously within reason on the where front. But also, making sure that people still have that local connection. And that's one of the things we hear a lot of, which is I want that flexibility, but I also want connectivity. So we're having to really balance that out and make sure that, both of those things can coexist. So we're very much promoting the flexible working environment. So we have a program called Flex for You, which means, first of all, unlimited holidays, so people can take holidays they want. They can work, where they want. Again, within reason, we all know there's some complexity around that challenge. And then, they can flex their days based on what they need to do. So we have a really flexible approach. But having said all of that, some of the feedback that we get through the survey is people are missing that social interaction. And so that's the biggest thing that I think we're struggling with and other companies are struggling with. And one of the things that we've done, again, not particularly revolutionary, but we created social committees in our locations and said to our employees, look, you own this. You decide what your local teams want to do. If you want to get together in the summer or over the winter holidays or whatever it might be, here's a budget. You go figure it out. You decide what is the right thing for you locally. But if whatever it is that drives connectivity, then this is on you to arrange. And people are doing things from things in the community together, or they're having parties or whatever it might be. But we're trying to foster that social connection as well as offering this hybrid world, which again, that was what they told us. And so really good feedback from the people in business. I do think that a good employee experience means that you can't just center on one type of employee. And we have to make sure that we're listening all the time. And I think one of the things that we do really well at Unit 4 is we listen. So we have a weekly engagement survey, which probably feels like a lot, but we get really good input from our people through those surveys, which really allows us to understand how they feel, what they're experiencing, what they want us to do more of, what they want to do less of. I think the engagement survey really matters. We get really good data from that survey. It allows us to, not just get ideas from the teams, but also to really track our overall engagement, so we can see, how people are feeling in general. And I think it just gives us a really good overall metric and barometer of the engagement levels in the business. So I think engagement surveys, I think used well are a really, really good metric. I've seen them used really well. I've seen them used as a bit of a tool to bash leaders with, and I don't think that's right. And I think there are other sort of softer things that we look at as well. So things like our internal recruitment numbers, looking at referrals, oddly. And I know that might seem like an odd one as well, but I think if we're getting a decent amount of our open vacancies filled by referrals from our own employees, that's a really good sign that people are willing to promote the business and promote employment with us. to their friends, to their family, whomever it might be. So I think this, even those kind of softer things are important. Um, and you can't, we can't do away with things like attrition. But I think attrition is becoming much less of a metric to measure as it relates to overall engagement or happiness, because as you and I have discussed before, the tenure of employees is getting shorter. I don't think we're all the way there with people just turning jobs every 12 months, of course, but it's definitely getting shorter. And I think it's much more acceptable that people leave after 2 years or 3 years. And therefore attrition becomes a little bit crude, because often it's viewed as a negative if you have high attrition, whereas actually I think, going forwards, attrition needs to be understood. I think you need to understand why your people are leaving, and are they good leavers? Are they leaving as a happy person, as opposed to just being super upset because your attrition is at 20%, whatever it might be. Um, so I think attrition is still an incredibly useful metric. I think it's how you dig into that and what you do with that data that's going to change on a going forward basis. I think engagement goes beyond benefit. It goes beyond wellness days. It, really speaks to, does the company have a mission, and not your old fashioned kind of mission statement, but what's the company stand for, and what's the values of the organization? And if you have that and you can communicate that to your employees, and you can harness their energy around these things, I think that goes a long way to driving engagement. And I would say Unifor do that very well. We have four very important values, and we harness them, we communicate, and we try to make sure that everybody sort of understands them. Therefore, they can operate within this kind of almost DNA frame. Where I've worked before, where it hasn't worked well, is that has been missing. There's not been a consensus around what is the company here for, what are we trying to achieve, what are our values. And I think when that's missing, everything else is very difficult. So you can tack on benefits, you can tack on engagement thing, but absent a really shared understanding of what we're all here to do, I think absent that, it's very difficult to drive employee engagement. And that's where I've seen it done badly, where that's missing. So I think, first and foremost, I go back to, and I know I keep repeating this, but I think it's understanding the purpose of your company and what values are really going to enable that purpose and actually bring that to life. And I think that's your starting point, because as we said before, if you then put in place a whole bunch of engagement things, which people, feel either they're disingenuous or they're too many and they don't make sense to them, then I think it's, that they won't have the impact necessary that you want. So I think understanding the purpose and the values of your business, and if you don't have them, establish them. Work with senior leadership and your CEO to establish that and make sure it's clear, and make sure it's, something that everyone in the business really understands. I think the second thing is listening to your employees. They're the ones who assess the employee experience. So don't make assumptions. So many people think that employee experience or engagement is an HR thing. It's so wrong. We can create the programs, we can come up with the creative ideas, but the reaction to them and the assessment of your employee experience, that sits with your people. So listen to them. They'll give you great feedback. They will help shape your employee experience. They'll help guide you in terms of things that are going to work and not work. So listening is absolutely critical. And I think the last thing for me is, be ready to iterate and change. What works this year or next year probably won't work the year after. As we said before, the last kind of 3 years have been so crazy with, changes and things that happened that none of us could have predicted. So we all had to pivot our employee experience, right? So I think we had to get used to that notion of, we live in a much more fluid world. We live in a world where people have choices. We live in a world where, people expect more from their employers than just going in 9 to 5 and being paid. And therefore we have to be ready to listen, ready to iterate, and ready to change, and be okay with it.